Divas! Welcome to the second episode of Diva Who Hustles, hosted by me, Suzanne Vinnick, as part of the TDO network. This week, I have got an amazing show for all of you. We have an amazing lineup of guests this week. I've got Tracy Cox. You may know her from these earrings, but we will get to it with her. Next up, we have Andy Moore back with more financial tips so you can avoid being a starving artist. No more starving artists. Lastly, we have a special performance by one of my favorite artists, Chelsea Hill, also known as the Illustrating Diva. So let's just get straight to it and let's have a fun show here on Diva Who Hustles. Hey there, Divas. Thank you so much for tuning in for more business, entrepreneurship, and of course, fashion here on Diva Who Hustles. I'm super pumped to invite one of my best friends who is not only like one of the most amazing sopranos on planet Earth that I would trade these vocal folds for. She is, Tracy, don't be humble here. She is a fat activist, visual artist, jewelry designer, spoken word poet, content creator, social media strategist extraordinaire, and basically a diva who hustles. Tracy, did I leave anything out?
No, I mean, that pretty much covers it. It's a lot of things.
So if you are an opera singer, you probably own a pair or like 23 of these beautiful earrings here from Neon Beautiful Design, designed by Tracy. What made you decide to kind of pump the brakes on making fringes and doing your jewelry business?
When I started it, it was a way to support my craft, which is singing, which is performance. And what ended up happening for me is that I realized that I couldn't actually keep up with the growth of the business. So it's a wonderful problem to have, but it was a real problem in that I could not scale up successfully to meet the demand, and then also serve my other goals of being a performer, of being a fat activist, of increasing visibility for fat artists. So what I had to do is I had to reassess whether or not the business was actually serving my goals. And I decided that it wasn't, that I couldn't actually give everything to my goals with also giving all that focus to the business. So I'll always make jewelry. I will always design. I hope that there will be like a kind of new iteration of this business at some point. But I wanted to kind of give myself the grace and the space to actually make the choice of what I was doing with my time, rather than let the choice be made by me, by someone else or outside forces.
See, that's like, it's so difficult sometimes to just be like, I can't do everything. You do so many things. Like, you're like me, we're Diva Who Hustle, like divas who hustle. Like, we do so many different things, but we can't always do everything at the same time and really like focus and give everything we need to these businesses if we're too scatterbrained and doing too many things all at once.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and that was a big lesson for me, I think, in that when you are someone who has all these different facets, you have to make a choice. Every time you put energy into something, you are making the choice, and you are taking that energy away from other potential things. I guess my point would be to be intentional with those choices that you're making.
So you've since gone on to make this incredible series that like everybody was watching over the summer, Angry Fat People.
We're angry fat people, we don't give a fuck.
Duck.
If you discriminate, we'll run you over with a truck. We're tired of you censoring thin bodies, so get ready for some rad fatties.
Angry fat people!
What has the response been to that awesome project?
Well, so there's Angry Fat People, the web series that Matt Anchel and I created together. And the kind of biggest project that we made coming out of that was our music video called Fat Liberation, which is the song that we released last summer in the music video. So the response has been amazing. And, you know, honestly, it's so fun to collaborate with someone like Matt. Like, Matt's one of my best friends, but beyond our friendship, he's just one of those collaborators that I click with, where it's just easy. Like, that's the best kind of art making and collaboration, where it's just, there's no strain, there's no struggle. You just like get together and you laugh and you create, and like, that's it. So it's just always been a joy every time we get together to make something. We made the intentional choice with Angry Fat People because we have a lot to say on the subject of artists in the performing arts with regards to fat people. We made the choice to not do a podcast, and we made the choice to actually make it a web series because we wanted to be the stars. We wanted to be in a visual medium where the fat people are the stars, and the fat people are the funny ones, the talented ones, the ones that are getting the attention. So that's been the intention. We've had a really successful live show in the Village in the fall, and we're hoping to continue that. We're writing more things, and I hope it keeps going.
I'm so excited for whatever you guys come up with, because I know it's going to be rad. So you also talk a lot about radical self-love and fat vanity. Like, can you explain what that is? And could you possibly explain, like, what are maybe some of the first steps somebody could take to kind of embrace that into their lives?
Absolutely. So I do talk a lot about radical self-love. Radical self-love, self-acceptance, body positivity, these things as a group are kind of like starter drug, the entrance drug to what I focus on, which is fat liberation and fat politics. So the difference between those two things is that self-acceptance and self-love is about the individual. So we as individual women living in a society that often treats women like objects and often views us through a lens of criticism towards the ideal, whatever the ideal woman supposedly is. So no matter what your body type is, you are most likely dealing with ideas of self-acceptance and self-love. So I would say that's the first step, is the individual step. And then the next step towards fat liberation and fat politics, that's when we think about these issues on a systemic level. So we think, how are fat people, people of different abilities, neurodivergent people, marginalized groups, how are they being impacted by systemic structures? So how are they, like for instance, fat people have a different different experience within the healthcare system. We have fewer opportunities for employment, lower access to housing, actual physical infrastructure. Like when I go to sit in a restaurant, sometimes I can't actually sit there because the restaurant is not designed to be inclusive of me. So fat liberation and fat politics is thinking about how do we change things on these big systemic levels. So if you're interested in either parts of that, I would say the first thing, a really easy thing that you can do is when it comes to social media that we're all kind of looking at, we're all scrolling all day looking at social media. You're the one who's curating what you look at. So the first thing you can do is diversify who you're looking at in your feed. Are you looking at the same thin, white woman always, heteronormative person always? Or are there different voices, different images, different people and cultures and ideas that you're looking at? It's amazing the impact it can have on your brain, just actually diversifying what you're seeing, what the possibilities are then created with your brain for yourself. What is actually, you're widening the box of what's acceptable for yourself when you are changing what you're seeing every day.
Sparkle Jams, your Instagram has such an active following. What are 3 tips to building a strong community?
The most important thing is authenticity, is not like, we have these tools, like these social media platforms are actually fairly egalitarian in the sense that if you put in the work to build the platform, there's no gatekeeper who's keeping you from building that platform. So if you put in the work, you can actually build a following and you can create a platform for yourself. But we can't start from that end. We have to start from the other end, which is, what is it that I have to say? What is it that I'm not hearing that I would like to hear? What is it in the world that I would like to see change? What is it in the world that inspires me? Whatever it is, if you start from that place, then you're going to very easily be able to create that authentic voice. You're going to be able to create art and all kinds of things that are going to authentically connect with people. And then you are utilizing these platforms, not in a cynical way, but in a way that is creating access to your voice and creating access to what you have to give to the world, which is significant.
What are some of the works of art, because I know you share a lot of art on Instagram, like what are some of the artists, or who are some of the artists that really personify the movement that you are part of?
There is a writer and speaker named Sonia Renee Taylor, who founded The Body Is Not an Apology. So she's a brilliant writer who talks about all of this stuff. So I'd follow her. I would follow, there's a Black fat femme philosopher and writer named Gervais, who creates amazing art. There's an amazing photographer named Shuglet, who takes pictures, a lot of pictures of fat bodies underwater that are just breathtaking. And then there's my yoga instructor, Fringish, who does amazing accessible yoga for fat people. So those are probably my top 4 favorites at the moment.
And of course, people need to follow you because I live for your posts. Like, I have the notifications turned on. I feel like it has like changed how I think about the world and society, and I think if more people were just exposed to it and just saw like their friends, their people that they love, and just saw what people are experiencing, like I think that their entire mindset about diversity and everything else would completely change. So thank you for the work that you are currently doing, and I honestly mean that from the bottom of my heart. My last question for you is, what would you tell yourself 5 years ago?
Okay, so 5 years ago, I think I would tell myself, so I think specifically coming at this from the lens of an opera singer, we all come up through this similar system where we go to school, sometimes we go to grad school, we do a young artist program, we do these summer training programs, and then we're supposed to be done and finished and like, here, I'm a professional now. And I think most of us experience coming through those programs, this feeling of having to have this classical music persona, like this is my opera singer, Tracy. And then perhaps we are filtering out the parts of us that make us unique, but that which don't classically fit into the kind of high arts world. And my advice to my former self and my advice to people who are just at that moment of a pre-professional moment, is to not filter out the things that make you a unique person and a unique artist. Those are the things that are going to make audiences connect with you. Those are the things that are going to make people excited to follow you and what you're doing. I think that the enemy of the artist is homogenization. So fight that. I think that any advice you get along the lines of making yourself more bland, making yourself into following the pattern of other singers is wrong.
I can't think of another diva in my life that is more of a hustler than you. So thank you so much for being here. And I look forward to everything that you're going to be doing in the future.
Thank you, Suzanne. You're the best.
Love
My
you.
pleasure. Love you. Bye.
Hey, this is Andi Moore, and this is No More Starving Artist Financial Freedom Tip for today. I am not a financial advisor, but these are some tips that I use to help me get through. 3 apps: Robinhood, a beginner's investors app for stock. Capital is a keep the change savings app, and Market Watch. It gives you financial current news. Thanks for listening.
The show, I wanted to bring on a talented diva I've worked with, but have never had the pleasure of meeting face to face until now. This is Chelsea Hill, the illustrating diva. Chelsea's stunning artwork has been featured in West 42nd Street magazine in New York City, where she was voted most popular cover for her September 2018 piece. She gained notoriety on social media after industry icons Stephanie Blythe, Anna Netrebko, Lizette Oropeza, and others began sharing her gorgeous creations. And in addition to all of that, Chelsea is also a dresser at the Metropolitan Opera. Why? Because she's a diva who hustles. So it seems like you really had a breakout year professionally between your incredible artwork and your work now at the Met as a dresser. What were you doing prior to illustrating, and how did you get that job at the Met?
So I was a singer and musical theater performer before I started drawing professionally and working in wardrobe. I moved to New York City from Nebraska right after I graduated. My first few years in the city, I was taking voice lessons. I was in an acting studio. I was a choral ringer, and I did a ton of babysitting. Back in school, I worked in my college's costume shop, so I had that experience, and I knew a couple of friends who had worked at the Met, and I called them up and asked if they would recommend me, and they did.
That's so awesome. See, it's all about networking. Like, people that you already know are usually like the biggest supporters that you can have that will then help you get jobs. So always be nice to people wherever you are.
Absolutely.
What has been your favorite project to date?
Oh man.
I mean, there's so many.
I know, I have so many that I like adore, but one that's like super special to me was for a online French fashion magazine called Grace in Paris. And it was my first professional illustration job, so that's why it's so special. And I drew their fashion illustration logo, but what was so cool about it was that the magazine had a big launch party during New York Fashion Week. And all my friends came to the party, and my family flew in from Nebraska, and my work was blasted everywhere. And it was a surreal moment. Like, in a million years, like when I first moved to the city, if you were to tell me that that would happen to me, I would not have believed you.
See, that's
so cool.
That's so rad to like be able to create these amazing pieces and then like see them in New York Fashion Week. Like, that's like the ultimate dream for anybody who's in fashion or loves fashion. Even just to like walk by a fashion show, you're like, hey girl, like, I'm here.
Oh, absolutely.
So tell me how you developed your really unique artistic style.
Well, I have 4 main loves in life: music, humor, glamour, and coffee. So those are just ingrained my sources of inspiration, and honestly, what I always think about. When I was in elementary school, I would always glam up my school art projects. I would put lipstick on my turkeys, or I would put like giant eyelashes on like any of the classroom animals that we were creating. So I was always glamming something up. My style, I like to say, is a cross between Chanel and a clown. So there has to be some type of humor to it. You know, it's like loud and colorful and silly, but like little hints of sophistication kind of thrown in. Yeah, I like to draw people that I admire and respect, but I like to put them in fun fashions that I would wear. So in a way, I put a piece of myself in everything I create. So I think that's where my signature style came from.
So I'm so excited for everybody to see this next little piece that we have coming up. We have a time lapse of Chelsea's work on yours truly.